What's up? What's up? What's up? What's going on, everyone? David, good to see you, my friend. Uday, welcome, welcome, welcome. What was that? Didn't expect the Dependency Injection rap concert. Whoop whoop. I wrote a rap just for this stream too. I'm about to break it out. Actually, how's the music level? Is it too loud? Too low? Just right? I hope it's just right. I'm still working on my audio levels here as I make the switch from Twitch to YouTube. Made some changes and hopefully you can just barely hear it, right? But yes, Dependency Injection rap concert. That's a great idea. We should do that. Awesome. Awesome. So how is everyone doing today? What's today? Is today Tuesday? Yeah, today's Tuesday. So I am streaming today, because normally, I like to stream on Thursdays. But I'm actually taking Thursday, Friday off. Got some family visiting from out of town, and it's spring break for my kids. So I'm taking Thursday, Friday off, so I won't be streaming on Thursday. But, I had a thought. Tell me what you think about this, okay? So normally I try to stream once a week on Thursday. But I work on a lot of interesting things. Well, to me, they're interesting. They may not be interesting to you, but I work on all kinds of different technologies and tools and products, from writing samples to writing content to structuring documentation to tutorials to learning content to support to marketing content to, I write product, like a vast responsibilities. And I started thinking to myself, I'm like, you know what? What if I just stream when I'm working? Like, just stream when I'm working on. Like, for example, I have to, I have to write some Uno apps for a new preview product for Uno platforms. Like, I want to write some apps that deal with reading David from reading data from COVID data, like create a COVID dashboard charting graphing app in Uno. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should stream that. I help customers write samples and stuff sometimes. Like, you know what? When I'm writing those samples, I should just hit the stream button and just do it live. Like, I don't know if anyone would find that interesting. Like, I got to write this documentation. That's fun. I should show everyone how I write documentation. I don't know if you would find that interesting, but what do you think about that? Should I just hit the stream button whenever, or should I have a set time, or maybe a mixture of both? Rubafix 989, go ahead. I might just do that. One Lubo One, hello, my friend. Thanks for joining. Good to see you. So yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm just gonna hit stream whenever I'm working on something, and if someone's interested, they'll join, and if not, they'll ignore me, and it's no big deal. But yeah, whatever. Maybe I'll give it a try. Stream it. I need an alert for stream it. All right, so today I wanted to follow up on a question I got last week. Last week I got a question about dependency injection. Someone's like, hey, could you do a stream on dependency injection? Because I still don't get it. I'm like, yeah, I could do like a very basic concept of what dependency injection is. I don't want to get into like all the different containers and what they can do and all that stuff. But basically I wanted to talk about the very basic concepts that make up dependency injection, and kind of point out that you're probably already doing it. You just don't know, right? That's my favorite part. My favorite part is showing you something you're doing. Like, oh, what's this? You're already doing it. You just probably don't know that's what you're doing. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Let me open up Visual Studio, switch to my desktop there. And what's the best way to do this? Probably, let's just do a console app. Yeah, console app. Let's do a console app. .NET Core's fine. I don't care what I call it. I'll call it console app 1. And be sure to ask any questions you have in the chat. now would be a great time to like this video, because apparently there's some algorithm that if it has a whole bunch of likes, it shows up. So that would be cool. And oh crap, I don't even know what I named this stream. What did I name this thing? Okay, I named it. Whew. I was worried I didn't name this. Mohammed! Hello, my friend. Good to see you. Okay, so dependency injection. That is a fun topic, isn't it? Well, let's kind of break this down, because there's another concept that we have to talk about before we get to dependency injection. And let's start by just creating some objects. What should we create? Let's create, I don't know, let's create a person service class. Right? So we have this class, person service. You know, it has a constructor. We do stuff in it. Something like do stuff. Something like that, right? Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Okay. I forgot how to write a method. All right, so most of the time, what happens is, let's say you have this class in your application, right? And in this application, you're using it like all over the place. So in our case, we're just using it in one spot. But pretend this is like we have lots of different objects in our application, lots of different views or view models or controllers or whatever you want to call them. Lots of these different things using this person service, right? And so everything's fine and dandy. And we're using this, and let's have this do something. Let's have it, I don't know, should we do like console.writeLine or something like that? WriteLine, I did something. That looks fine, okay. Daniel says, thank you, Brian, explain everything so that I can understand it. I'm gonna try my best. Now, let's say we call this service, and we're gonna call it do stuff. Save, Control S. Okay, there we go. Let me run this app real quick. And we can see that I did something. There it is right there at the top. I did something. Okay, so our service works, and we're using this everywhere in our application, right? Now, we have a problem here is we're newing it up, right? So you probably have lots of code that news an object up. This is very common in OO, right? And I want to point out that dependency injection is not C# specific, right? The concepts I'm talking about, they go cross-platform. I'm just using C#, right? But the concept does not change depending on if you're in Java or C++ or, you know, JavaScript or whatever. Like, the concepts are the same. Okay, these are patterns. These are design patterns and design methodologies. Okay. Okay, Sergio, will you tell us about IOC containers? Yes, I will tell you about that. Okay, so now we have this class of service and it does stuff. And throughout our application, we could be calling this like 20 times everywhere. Like just we have this massive app, and we are calling this thing everywhere. Okay, well. Now what happens is we need to change some logic, right? We want to add a logger. Okay, so let's go ahead and add another class, and I'm just going to call it logger. Whoops. Okay. Now this is going to have a method called log. And we will console.writeLine I logged something. Okay, so now what happens is we're like, we have a change. We have a change in our application. Something happens, like, you know what? I want to start logging things that happen in this service, right? Like something happens in this person service and I want to start logging it. So our first instinct is to do something like this. Oh, well, I'm just going to create a logger. Whoops. New logger. And then I can say logger.log. Okay. So this is your first instinct. We're creating a new object right? We have a new object here. We're newing up an object here. And this isn't great. We don't want to do this. And the reason we normally do it this way is because if we were to do something like this, it's like, oh, well, I can just pass it in, right? I'll just pass it in like this, and I can set the logger equal to our logger. Well, now what we've done is we've broken our application. Like it's completely broken. We have to go to everywhere that we are newing up this object manually, and we have to create a new logger, whatever we do, whoops. But we have to create this object, and now we have to pass it in. And we have to fix that code everywhere we're using this logger. So we normally don't do that. We'll normally like, oh, well, I don't want to break our code. So, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and create this logger instance here. But the problem with that is now we're creating this coupling, right? We're creating a very tight coupling between the person service and this logger, meaning that wherever this logger exists, we have to have a hard reference to that logger. So if I had another class library here, this would have to reference that class library that contains that logger. And what if I have different types of loggers? You know, what if I had a logger for debugging? What if I had a logger for data analytics or something like that? What if I had a logger for telemetry data for usage of the application? What if I had a logger that logs exceptions? Like, I have all these different loggers, but I don't know which one I want to use. Like, well, am I going to say, hey, var t-logger for my telemetry logger, right? Or am I going to have a different logger for everything? No, you're not going to do that. How do I swap my loggers out? What about unit testing? Like, I want a unit test, but this is using my DB logger. This hits the database. And in my unit test, I can't be hitting my database. Like, I need to be able to switch this logger out, right? So by doing this, we have created a sandbox. Well, I don't want to say a sandbox. I want to say something like we have boxed ourselves in, right? We have imprisoned ourselves into a very tightly coupled, not flexible, not maintainable architecture in our application. Like, this is not good. Like, I never new up anything in my apps, okay? You'll never see new for the most part in my application. I won't say never, but for the most part. So then you're like, oh, Brian, well, I know what I'll do. I have the perfect solution. I'll say static class. Ah, that's it, Brian. I'll say static class. And then I could just say logger.log. Well, as soon as that's static. Then I could just access the static part, right? Oh yeah, this is looking good, Brian. I feel good about that. No. Don't do that. Static is the devil. Unless you like the devil. The static is something you don't like. Okay? So, static, this is kind of referred to as a singleton pattern. And the singleton pattern is not, it's kind of like an anti-pattern. It's when you're writing the code, you know, it's like, oh, this makes it very easy for me to write code because I can just make all this stuff static. And then I can reference it anywhere in any class or object that I'm working with. But that comes with a ton of other problems, okay? Ideally, what we want to do is we want to provide the person service with the type of logger that we want. Okay, and to do that, what I like to do is I like to start creating interfaces for objects that need to be injected. I'm going to say injected for now. Okay, they need to be provided. Okay, so for example, I would start out with an interface of iLogger, and it would have that single method on it. What's it called? Oh, I called it log, right? And then this would implement iLogger. Okay, perfect. All right. So all I've done so far is I've created an interface because I'm saying, hey, I don't really care what object I'm passing in. It just has to know how to log. So this interface is giving that contract for that class. So the implementer will say, I know how to log. I can do that. Okay. So now we have a class that implements iLogger. Now let's talk about a concept that you already do now. So we kind of talked about what happened if we didn't do it this way, right? If you don't want to new up inside the object, which is really bad, you don't want to do this, right? We don't want to new up. That means we have to pass it in. We have to pass in the instance of the logger, right? So I'm gonna say I logger, and then we can set. Whoops. Now we can set our logger equal to our logger. Okay, so this is pretty good, but now we've broken the entire app. However, what we have done here, this right here, you do this already. This is called inversion of control. Okay, you are taking the responsibility of creating that object or that dependency, and you're putting it somewhere else, right? Before, we were newing it up inside the class. So this class, this service, was responsible for newing up its dependencies. And there's a few problems, there's a lot of problems with that. But one of the biggest ones, besides testability, extensibility, maintainability, all that stuff, is that you have hidden the dependencies of this class. You don't know what this class requires to function, okay? So what we've done here is we said, hey, this is oh my gosh. Right? So this is a dependency that this service needs in order to function. We have made that clear in the constructor. So now we know whenever we new this service up, we have a dependency that's required. And this dependency is going to be provided by something else. That's inversion of control. So what we would then be responsible for is creating that logger and then passing that logger in. Okay? Now the app's going to work the exact same. Right here, I did something, I logged something. The difference here is that we have created an abstraction, right? We've created this abstraction between the service and any dependencies it requires. Now, we did break our code by doing that, right? It's like, ah, crap, now my code doesn't compile. I got to go fix all my errors. And then I got to create my new logger. And they're going to say, you know, well, what if I have a Singleton logger? Like, should I use a static here? You know, we may have to go back to the static logger. But the concept here that I want you to understand is what you've done here is a form of dependency injection, okay? You are providing that dependency yourself. You are just newing it up, right? So you're creating this dependency and you're passing it in. But this is a form of dependency injection because you are injecting that dependency, right? You said, oh, this service has a dependency of iLogger. And you don't care how this works, right? So for example, let's say class another logger, but it implements iLogger, right? Let's go ahead and implement. Hey, how come I don't have a, oh, do I have to be on that? Control dot, yeah, implement interface. Right, so here I'm gonna copy, oh, I misspelled that. Why didn't someone tell me I misspelled that? Right, so I have another logger. I logged something again. And now I can come up here. Var another logger equals new another logger. And instead of the first logger, I can pass in that logger. My code still works. Nothing's broken. I just changed the logger I'm providing. And so now I log something again, right? But I created that dependency and I'm providing that dependency. So I have abstracted away the responsibility of creating this logger object onto something else. Right now, that something else is me, right? Hey, how you doing? I can't read that kanji unless it's Chinese. I can't read that. I'm sorry. But welcome, my friend. Okay. So this is where we start kind of talking about dependency injection with a dependency injection container. Okay, so everyone kind of has heard, you know, containers, right? A DI container. Well, the concept of a DI container is actually really simple. Think of it like a dictionary of types, right? All it does, it's a dictionary of types, and when you ask for a type, it's going to create it for you automatically. It's just going to give it to you. And it just so happens that if that type that you're requesting has dependencies too, well, it's going to create those as well. And it's going to keep going down that dependency chain until it doesn't find any more dependencies. Okay, so that's all it really is. And so if you wanted, you could build a DI container yourself, a very basic DI container, just, have a dictionary of types. And when you ask for a type, you can use create instance, activator.create instance to create it for you, right? But there are much better containers out there that we'll play with. Okay, but this is like the basic idea. Is we're taking these dependencies, right? We're surfacing them in the class. Like, we want to make sure that we are aware that this class has these dependencies and are required to function. We also want to make sure that we're using interfaces for those dependencies, because this allows us to swap out the implementation. And you may be saying, Brian, I've never had to swap out anything. And then I'm going to say, you probably don't unit test. Okay? You probably don't unit test, because when you unit test, you have to mock your objects. You're going to mock your dependencies and pass in fake dependencies that you can exercise and test to make sure your code is working as expected. So for example, in this case, this logger, this might be production logger here. So when I'm running the app, I'm using production logger. Now, a really easy way, like if you were just hacking this, you could say, hey, if debug, if not debug, if I can spell, which I can't, right? We're going to do that logger, else we're going to do this logger. Now to do this, we're going to do this. We're going to say ilogger, logger. And let's do this. Boom. So this is like the hacky way, right? If you're not using a DI container or something like that. So right now, since I'm in debug mode, I'm going to use this test logger. So I'm going to run this. And look, we're using ilog something again. So this is my another logger instance. But if I swap this to release mode and run it, we see that I have an error. Using just my code. Continue debugging. I don't know what that means. Can I not console log? Can I not console in release mode? I've never hit that before. You are debugging. Disable just my code and continue. So, wait, you're debugging a release build using just my code with release builds using compiler up to that. Breakpoints will not be hit. I'm not trying to hit. Continue debugging. Oh, okay. I don't know what that is, but it worked. Sorry. That was confusing. So here you can see that we're in release mode. So we're using our release logger, which is ilog something, right? So this is just like a very basic example, but I hope it kind of drives home the point that depending on some condition, being in a unit test, maybe you have a debug build versus a release build versus a test build. So you can create different builds. And like if an ASP.NET MVC app, you can have different environments you target, right? Production, a dev, staging. Well, you can have different implementations based on those conditions. Like, oh, is this the staging server? Oh, am I the staging configuration? Well, then I want to make sure all of my dependencies are staging or dev, right? And when you hit release mode, it's like, oh, now I'm going to use the debug logger, right? If I'm in debug mode. So that is conceptually how we want to approach this. It asks you to use the debugger in release mode. Yeah, I think I just hit debug in release mode and it's saying, hey, you're trying to debug release mode. This isn't going to work. I think that's what it was saying. I've never seen that before, actually. That's the first time I've seen that. Okay. But any questions so far? Are we all on the same page up to now? Okay. So, big takeaway. Our class should abstract away its dependencies, right? We're not creating these inside the class. We are putting the responsibility of providing these dependencies onto something else. Now, remember when I said, you know what? You're probably using these techniques and you don't even know it. You're using these patterns and version of control and things like that, and you don't even know it. If you have ever written code where you pass in a dependency like this, you're using inversion of control. You're using that pattern. You are injecting the dependency yourself. So you're using dependency injection. I use that term very loosely. But you're using dependency injection. It's just you're creating that dependency and you're injecting that dependency into the object. So you're using this pattern. You probably just never realized it. Okay. So now this is where dependency injection containers come in. Okay. Because now you start asking yourself, like, well, Brian, you know, I have done this, but there are cases where I need the same instance throughout the whole app. And so that's why I use a static, right? I use that static logger because I need that instance to the whole application. Well, if you are using a static logger, I hope you're doing it like the way we did it, logger.log, right? You're passing in the static instance and not using it within the actual class itself, right? Because you don't want to hide that. And statics are very, very difficult to test, right? But that's where dependency injection containers come in because they then manage the lifetime of these objects for you. So not only will they create them for you, okay, they'll let you control how they're created. You're going to get a transient, meaning are you going to get a new instance each time? Are you going to get a singleton? Are you going to get, you know, the same instance each time? Do you want a scoped instance, right? So there's lots of options. But for the most part, they're pretty simple. So let's add a container. Let's add, oh crap. What container should we use? How about Unity? Unity is a pretty well-known container. Package contains Unity container. I'm sorry. Okay, yep. So let's use the Unity DI container. Now there's all kinds of containers. Okay. So what's a scoped instance? Okay. So a scoped instance means that the instance will be created scoped to a certain resolve process. I don't know if that makes sense. So basically, let's see if we can kind of get into that. I'll come back to that, Michael. I'll come back to that. Because, like, for example, Prism uses scopes. Okay. And let's start with the basic stuff. Okay, first off, let's create iUnity container. It's been a long time since I've done iUnity container. And we'll call this container equals new Unity container. Okay, first off, when dealing with containers, there's a concept called your root. And you always want to have just one root where your container lives. And from that root, everything is created. Okay? Everything is created from that point forward. So you don't want to be passing your container around into other objects. For example, if this logger needed to resolve something, you wouldn't pass in the container to resolve it. And so I'll get back to that. Okay? So we've created this container. And remember, the rule is, the concept is that a container is just a dictionary of types, right? High level rule that means that dictionary needs to know about your types. You have to register your classes with the container so it knows how to compose them, how to resolve them. So usually off these containers, there is a register method. So in the case of Unity, you have register instance, register factory, register singleton, register type. Those are the ones it provides, okay? So let's just start with very basic register type. Now, on register type, you're going to have your interface, which is iLogger, and then you're going to have the implementation, such as logger. Now, okay, so what I'm saying here, Farisa, you are a great teacher. Hope you consider doing videos, tutorials about advanced subject in C# like that. Tell me what you want to learn, my friend. I'll do my best to create some content about that. Okay, so what we have done here is, remember, conceptually, we're dealing with just a dictionary of types. So we have to add our types to the dictionary, okay? So in this case, we're going to use the register type method on our Unity container to let the container know about our types. What I am saying here is I'm saying, hey, Unity container, whenever I ask for iLogger, I want you to give me the logger instance, right? Create an instance of this logger and give that to me, okay? So, for example, if I wanted the container to resolve my service, my person service, I'm going to say, hey, container, whenever I ask for person service, which we haven't created yet, give me person service. Okay, so let's go ahead and create person service really quick. person service. And we'll put, what should we put on here? Do stuff. And then we'll implement person service. Okay, we're starting to create these abstractions. Ali, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining. Right? So now, instead of doing this newing up stuff, right? I don't want to new this stuff up. So first off, let's simplify our code just a tad. Let's simplify this so we can build upon that knowledge. Okay, so now that our container knows about our types here, okay, we can then start asking the container to create stuff. So for example, I'm going to comment these out, and let's just start with the logger. And I'm going to say logger.log. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, hey, container.resolve iLogger. Right? I'm asking the container, I'm saying, hey, whenever I ask for iLogger, what's it going to give me? It's going to give me the logger. Dan, my friend, Dan the man, explaining DII. You reviewing your notes for me, explaining, yeah, funny. Okay, Dan's a joker. He's a joker. Okay, so whenever I'm asking for the logger, I'm going to ask for the iLogger, and what's it going to give me? Well, because of my registration, it's going to give me an instance of the logger. So let's go ahead and run this. Here's the app. I logged something. Okay, great. It worked. Okay, nice. But Brian, how is that different from just saying new logger? Well, it's a lot different. So now let's comment this out and let's move on to the service. Okay, because, well, actually, let me back up just a little bit. Let's uncomment our service. And I'm going to run this. I'm going to comment that out because the container created that logger for us and we're passing the logger in manually. Right? I did something, I logged something, works the same. Well, here's the real power of this. Is we're going to take this service and now we're going to say, we're going to have the container create that service for us, right? So, hey, resolve person service. So once again, I'm asking the container for person service. And since the container knows, because I told it, I said, hey, container, whenever I ask for person service, I want you to give me the person service instance. Okay? So when I ask for person service, I'm going to get the person service. So let's go ahead and run this. and it worked. I did something, I logged something. Did you see what happened? I'm gonna break just for a second. I'm gonna pause for a second because something happened here, very subtle, that you may not have noticed from when we were manually creating this dependency. When we were manually newing up that object, what did we have to do? Well, we had to pass in the logger. I'm looking at this constructor, I'm like, huh, that person service needs an iLogger, but we didn't pass that in, right? We didn't do new person service passing in the logger. We didn't do that. Weird, but it still worked. Yes, it still worked because our container knows about the logger, right? Our container says, oh, hey, I'm resolving this iPerson service. Okay. Oh, hey, look, this person service has a dependency of iLogger. And it's going to go back and say, hey, I know what that is. I know what an iLogger is. You know what? I'm going to create that for you. And I'm just going to pass it in because I know how to create that. So it creates it for us, right? And then our app continues to work, but we didn't have to new any of that stuff up ourselves. Okay. Oh, hold on. Dan, if you use a useful container, yeah. We're not getting into advanced stuff, Dan. Okay. We're keeping this simple, very simple. Angelo, good to see you from Brazil. All right. This is the basics. This is the basics, Dan. We're not getting super complicated here. All right. So now, check this out. Now, remember that problem. So I want to rewind all the way back to where we had that problem where, you know what? We added something to this service, right? We added something to this constructor and we broke our application, right? We broke it. And we had to go throughout the entire app, like however many hundreds of views we had or objects that were using this service, and we had to go update. That constructor and create the object and pass it in, right? So what I mean is like, okay, before, let's say we have another class, I don't know, iDependency, right? iDependency. We'll just call it iDependency. It's not going to do anything. And then we have public class. Well, why did I say public? Nothing in here is public. Class, my dependency, implements iDependency. Okay, so now, for example, this person service, sometime down the road, right, somewhere throughout the history of this app, we had to add functionality because, you know, that never happens. But we had to add functionality. And so we had to add another dependency to this project. Now, so I modified our constructor, right, to add a new dependency because this dependency is going to do something. Whatever it is going to do it. Well, what's weird is we don't have any compile errors, right? That's because we are not newing up any objects anywhere. We are, relying on the person service to be resolved by the container, right? Our container's doing all the heavy lifting. So, but what happens if I run this as is? What do you think is going to happen? Oh, got an exception. Why did we get an exception? Well, for one, it doesn't know anything about our dependency here. It doesn't know about this. So remember that Unity container or that DI container, that dictionary of types needs to know about our types. So we can say container.register type iDependency, and when I ask for iDependency, give me my dependency class instance. Okay, so now that it knows about that dependency, it works just fine, right? It resolved this dependency for me as well. So I was able to extend this class, add new functionality, whatever that functionality did, calculations or whatever. but I didn't have to go fix all these different areas of my code anywhere. The only code that changed was scoped to this class, right here. And then whatever logic I had to add, and then I have to go update my unit test because I have to test this new functionality I just added, right? But because my container knows about that, well then, it can just do it for me, right? Dan says, advanced stuff is where all the fun is at. Benjamin, hi Brian, 2 in a row, yeah. Okay. So, Hackle says, how now to do the different loggers with DI containers? So, your loggers, you could change your registration a number of ways. First, a lot of these containers allow you to register with by convention. You can do it in code. You can do it with like some type of XML file, config file. So, for example, you could still do the if def if you wanted to, right? Hey, if I'm in debug mode, if I can't spell, you know, if debug, I'm gonna register that way. Else, give me another logger. Did I delete that? Oh, I deleted that, right? But that's one way to do it, right? The trick is, you know, you can, They say, yes, but Brian, if you use something awesome like Prism, you would get a container resolution exception. Yes, Dan. Yes, if you use something awesome like Prism, you would get great information about errors you would get. Right? Okay. The point is the container, or using DI, gives you the flexibility to swap out your dependencies depending on your scenario. So for example, in unit tests, you could mock your these interfaces with objects and register those objects with your container. That way, when your container resolves them, then it would use your mock instance instead. Okay, and we do this in the Prism tests all over because it depends on DI. So Linus says, how is it able to create the instance without you providing it? That's what the DI containers do. That is their only job. Their job is to know about, you know, your dependencies, your objects, right? And you don't have to use interfaces. You don't have to. I would always recommend it. But you register your types, and then it knows whenever it runs into that type, it's going to say, oh, yep, I need to create that. And since it already knows about it, it creates it, right? So when it looks at this object it's creating, it looks at that constructor. And just a tip, if you had multiple constructors on here, you know, like CTOR, and you had one like this, right? The DI container is always going to take the constructor with the most dependencies or the most arguments here, okay? Your parameter list here, it will not resolve using this. Okay, so I'll hit this breakpoint. We'll go ahead and run this. And it failed because what I do with, what did I do with iPerson service? It's because I had multiple, it didn't know which constructor to use. Now there are like dry IOC, it automatically takes the constructor with the most parameters. I think Unity does it crash? It looks like Unity just throws up. I haven't used Unity in a really long time because I've been using dry IOC. Let's run this again. I don't think it will give me the actual error. Yep, failed to select the constructor. So Unity throws up if you have more than one constructor. I think you can add rules to Unity, but it's been so long since I've used it, I don't remember how you would do that. But dry IOC, for example, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but dry IOC will pick, if you had multiple constructors, I don't think it throws up. I think it actually picks the constructor with the most arguments, but I don't remember that. All right. Landis, you mean how does it know which constructor to use? Okay. Sorry. I misunderstood Linus's question. Okay, so I'm going to remove this because I'm using Unity and it doesn't like that. And now it should work again. Oh, I removed the iLogger. Oh, I broke something. Let me undo. Oh, there we go. There we go. iLogger's back. iPerson's back. Okay, we're back to where we were. Perfect. Yeah, Dan says, generally they pick the constructor with the most arguments. Prism configures dry-LC to pick the one that's able to resolve everything for assuming it failed. Yeah. Well, we're not talking about Prism today. Prism's special, because Prism's an advanced framework for building apps. And so we do a lot of cool stuff to handle those things. But if you're just getting started from scratch, right, these are things you have to consider. Okay, so the container knows how to resolve all this stuff. Now, like, you can do really cool stuff with the containers, and most of them will support the same features. So for example, let's say that you had that Singleton instance of iLogger that you wanted, okay? So for example, you can say register Singleton. Now, it's hard to tell, but for example, let's go to this class, this my dependency. And let's add a CTOR. And this CTOR is going to take iLogger too. Okay, so this is going to take iLogger. Let's add something so we know we're dealing with the same instance. How can we know we're dealing with the same instance? Maybe like a date time, maybe? Let me add a property on here. Date time. Actually. I wonder if this will happen too fast. I always forget that. There we go. I always forget if this is going to happen too fast. We'll find out if this happens too fast. But the idea is I can register the Singleton. Okay. I'm going to run this. This logger. Okay, 43 seconds. Crap, that's not going to work because... Oh, no, I got to set it in the constructor. Because this is going to set that on the... Yep. That's going to set it every time I request it. Don't want to do that. It needs to be set one time. There we go. There we go. Fix that. Okay, let's do this again. Okay, logger. 17. Logger. 17. Okay, so we have the same instance. And just to confirm this, I'm going to put this back to just register type, which should give me a new instance. Oh, you know what I should probably do? Probably like a random number, like a random int instead of time. That's what I probably should have done. So 41. Yeah, see, this happens too fast. So let's not use date. That was a bad idea, Brian. Okay, let's like int number, whatever. Ooh, a GUID. Even better. Even better. Thank you, Oliver. String. Or I could do GUID type. No, let's do string. Let's do string. Let's do string. We'll call it GUID. Now we can say GUID equals GUID dot next. Is it next? Or is it new GUID? I forgot. I haven't used a GUID in a long time. Okay, yeah, new GUID. All right. Man, I have not used that in a very long time. All right, so now, hope we can read this. It's going to be so hard to read this. Oh, what? I got 0, 0, 0. That's not gonna work. Does anyone remember the syntax for a new GUID? Anybody? Is it like GUID? I thought it was like GUID.new something. Is that not? Oh, Angelo. Oh, thank you, my friend. System.GUID.new. There it is. Thank you. New GUID.toString. Man, that was the hardest part of this demo. God. Okay. All right. Let's try this one. So our GUID ends in 1411. This one is different. Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Oh. Oh. Woo. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Angelo. I appreciate that. Thanks for the help. All right. So because we said register type, it gave us a new instance each time. However, we can say register singleton, and this will make sure that it's a singleton. So this is analogous to your static approach, right? You're going to get the same instance each time. Okay. So we'll run this. We'll see the logger here. Ends in CBD. Here's our logger, ends in CBD. So that is the same instance. All right. Now, besides like just registering singletons, you can also register instances. Like, so the difference between like a register singleton is like the object won't be created. The first object will not be created until you ask for it, right? So right now we're just registering it and we're saying, hey, whenever I ask for iLogger, I want you to give me the logger. And anytime I ask for iLogger after that, you're going to give me the same logger instance, right? I'm getting the same instance each time. However, we can do something like this. We can say, you know what? I have an instance of a logger that I care about. So for example, I can say var logger equals new logger. Did we add a dependency to logger? No? Okay, good. Right. So, and then I could say, I don't know, logger.GUID equals GUID.new GUID. Okay. Data setter only. Oh, dang it. Getter only. So let's add a setter. All right, so now I'm setting it. And actually to prove that we have the same instance, let's create this so we can compare, right? Now what I can do is instead of register singleton, I'm gonna say, hey, container, I want to register an instance. And whenever I ask for iLogger, I want you to give me the logger instance that I have created here, right? So I have manually created this for whatever reason. I have set some state. I have done some stuff. Let's go ahead and hit a breakpoint here. Let's run our app. Now our GUID ends in B2, right? So now we're going to register this instance. Now the instance is resolved in the myDependency object. The GUID ends in B2. Now the person service here. The logger ends in B2. So it is indeed using the instance that we created and said, hey, whenever I ask for iLogger, I want you to use this specific instance every time. So it's still a singleton. Okay, this is still analogous to your static logger. Okay, but this is a much better approach because you can still, you know, have all the benefits that you get with using dependency injection. I see Dan making jokes. We can see Brian doesn't actually write code these days. No, I just write too much code in different technologies. I'm all over the place. I was just writing React yesterday. Not JavaScript. I like TypeScript better though. But sometimes you have to be in JavaScript. Okay. So, any questions so far? Any questions so far? Okay. Does everyone kind of understand, you know, what you're accomplishing by using DI? Like, do you see the benefit of it? Do you have any questions about? Frederick says, is it possible to configure the container to use the decorator pattern? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Because a decorator pattern is something different. You can have an object that decorates other objects and register that object with your container. And then your container can resolve your decorator. So yeah, I mean, you can totally do that. So what about constructors with parameters? Well, these constructors do have parameters. See that? And so I can add another dependency to this and it will just work. And I believe Unity will actually, so what you've seen now, what you see right now is I am registering the dependency, an interface with the implementation type. But I'm gonna do a test right now because I think it's been a long time since I've used Unity. Let's go public class, test class. Some containers will actually resolve concrete types automatically. I think Unity is one of those. So let's try it real quick. Yes, okay. So Unity will automatically resolve a concrete type. So I created this test class, a concrete type, no interface, and I did not register it. You notice that? There's no register test class up here because the container the Unity container automatically resolves concrete types. Okay. Now there's some containers that don't by default, like dry IOC doesn't by default, but you can set it up to where it does. I believe the Microsoft dependency container, injection container, I don't think it will do that. But I don't know. I don't really use that one much. I'm just trying to remember from my frustration days with it because I really can't stand that container. Let's see. Getting lost in my... Okay. Jester said, I registered the resource as an instance to the view model first to add the data template, but I don't know if it was a good idea. I'm not sure what you're getting at there. Registered resources as an instance to the view model first to add the data template. That I'm not getting that one. Not getting that one. Can you try to explain that one a little more, Jester? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding that question. Okay. If you want to compare instances, one Lubo one says if you want to compare instances, you can just call it get hash code. It is used to check if this. I used to have check the same event aggregators. Yeah, so if you're using Prism and you use the event aggregator is a Singleton. So you'll get the same instance no matter where you're at in your app. So, okay, let's take this a little bit further. Like, what does this DI stuff really, really buy me? Like, let's really look at how cool this can be. Okay, I'm going to create another project. Let's create a new project. And I need a .NET class library. Let's do a class library. Yeah, we'll call it class library 1. That is perfectly okay with me. And let's move some of this stuff around. Add a project reference to our class library. Let's move our person service, our iPerson service. No, let's just move. Let's move person service. Ooh, okay, I have an idea. Let's just go insane with this. I'm gonna go really ridiculously crazy. Class library 2. I'll say class library 1 dot interfaces. I'm going to abstract the crap out of this. Okay. All right, so we got that. I want to delete that class library, or that class, this class. So here we're going to add our interfaces. So actually, I should have just kept that. I could have put all these interfaces in that one freaking... Okay, where's my interfaces? Interface. Get rid of that. Logger. I'm just gonna put all my interfaces in one project. Dependency. Okay. Okay, now let's just add another class here. And we're going to move. We're going to move these class, test class, that's fine, person service. We're going to move all these into this project. So we're separating our interface implementations into different projects. Okay, so we're getting really like high level abstractions. So I add a project reference to interfaces. And then here, getting lost. I should have named these better, so now I can't read my own project. Add interfaces. All right, so let's add our using statements here. What? Interfaces. I know I added interfaces there. What? Why? I added the project reference, right? Oh, what's this? What's this? Netcore 3.1. Netcore 3.1. These are class libraries. Netcore 3.1. This is all Netcore 3.1. Oh, public! Golly. Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you. That's what happens when you just start writing code, not paying attention. Okay, those are all public. Alrighty, so we got all our interfaces. Now, yay, there it is. There it is. Thank you very much. Oh, hold on. Falling behind on the chat here. Oh, he's talking about the factory method. Have primitive, get the default value. What, Brian was showing how it works? Okay, Dan's just causing trouble. Okay, so we have abstracted our classes out. Let me add our using statements here. Okay, so what we have here is we have put... I don't know why I'm getting this little exclamation point there. These are all .NET Core 3.1 apps. See? 3.1. Why does this console app not like that 3.1 class library? How weird is that? Let me run this. I want to make sure this works. And it still works. So Visual Studio's doing something funky. Okay. Now, what I have done is I have abstracted out the interfaces and the class and the classes themselves into different projects. Okay. So this project has all our interfaces, no implementation. This class library has all of our implementation, no interfaces. Okay. But check this out. I want to try to drive this point home. Okay. If we look at our dependencies for the console app, only our main application is referencing the container. Okay? Only the main application, it's referencing the container. These have zero dependencies. Like, there's no dependencies on our class libraries. However, all of the functionality are in those class libraries, right? So I still need my logger. I still need my dependency and my test class for this thing to work. Okay? So we have abstracted away all that information. I'm gonna run this and it's still going to function the exact same. It still works, even though those other libraries, our class library and our interface library, they have no clue how they're being created, right? They don't know how these objects, how these dependencies are being injected into them. Okay. Dan, thanks for joining, my friend. I always appreciate you coming and showing your love, man. I'll catch you on Discord. Right? Michael says it's because VS is excited you're writing code there. But yeah, so I want to point out the power of this is that these class libraries, they don't care how these dependencies are being created, right? They have no knowledge of the container. They don't reference the container, none of that. However, they still function normally, right? So I can throw this in a completely different application, right? I can put this in a NuGet package, bring it into my app, and it's gonna function just fine, okay? Because we have abstracted away everything and there's no knowledge whatsoever on how they're being created because the container is creating all these objects for us, all right? Benjamin, do they really need to know how they're made? No, they don't. But if you're just now joining us, you know, we talked about how a lot of people do code classes and they don't use DI. So they're in here saying, oh yeah, new logger equals new logger, right? And so, for example, you know what? Maybe this doesn't drive the point home far enough. Let's add another library here. Let's add a new project. New class library. I'm gonna call this library1.logger. Right? And then I'm going to move this logger into this project. And then I have to make sure I add my, not that one. Add project reference to my interfaces. Right? Make sure I got that in there. I'll have to come add my using statement. That looks good. See, now because we're newing this up ourselves, we can add a reference to that. Okay, I probably should have done that myself. Cancel, I'll do it myself. You're too slow. Add project reference to my logger. All right, now I add my using statement. Okay, so this is working now. But now this person service, once again, we don't even have the logger class in here, right? That logger class doesn't exist. So I couldn't create a new instance of that logger if I wanted to. It's impossible now. It doesn't even reference the class, right? This class library doesn't reference the class library that contains the logger. So I have protected myself architecturally from making bad decisions because I can no longer new up this dependency inside this class. It has to be passed in by something, right? It has to be passed in by something, and that something is done here. I just let my container know about my logger, and it will create it for me. So it's still going to function just the same. See, I did something, I logged something. It still functions the exact same, but we have completely abstracted away the knowledge of any logger class or logger implementation from the consumer of that logger, right? It's you can't write bad code now because you have taken that freaking logger out of the project and you're not referencing it. So you can't do this. Never do this. I never want to see anyone write code where you're creating dependencies inside the class it's dependent on. Don't do this. But now you can't. You can't do it. And it's a beautiful thing, right? So, I mean, theoretically, we could put all of these in different projects if we wanted to. All right. Benjamin, the only thing that needs to know is the container, whatever type you use. Exactly. That's it. So this makes your code so nice and beautiful, extensible, testable. You're like, Brian, what do you mean extensible? Well, because I extended this. I can extend this class and it's just going to work. Like, let's add another dependency. Another class. Right? I'm going to extend this service with new functionality because something happened and whatever. So imagine you have this huge application, hundreds and hundreds of views and objects, and you wanted to change just the person service with something new. Well, I didn't have to break my app compile time or runtime to do that. It still works perfectly fine, but I'm able to extend this class without impacting any of my other code because I'm using a container that is responsible for resolving any dependencies, right? And since I'm not newing up a person service anywhere, I don't have to go throughout the whole freaking app looking for all the build errors. So I have to add a new constructor argument or parameter, right? So it's freaking awesome. Not only that, you are now 100% testable. We can start writing unit tests for this because we can mock this logger. We can mock this dependency. We can even mock this test class, but ideally that would be iTest class. Really, I mean, honestly, that should be an iTest class. But that's essentially the gist of it. Okay? That's all dependency injection really is. It's just a way to move the responsibility of creating your objects and creating your dependencies and move that to something that's its job, right? And that's what a dependency injection container's job is. That's its only job. Its only job is to create objects and create objects dependencies and those dependencies. And so, you know, earlier we had a question. This is more along advanced stuff. But we had a question about scoped, you know, register scope and creating scopes and things like that. So a scope is essentially, when I call resolve here, right? And this resolve creates this iPerson service. Okay, now if we go back to our person service, then we get a logger, we get a dependency, we get a test class. And then if this dependency also has a logger, then it gets this logger. Okay, now when you start scoping, okay, so for example, this register singleton, right? If we did this register singleton here, okay, and if we didn't do this register instance, let me comment that out, just as an example, I would get the same instance within my scope. Okay, so if I set a scope, and in Unity, I'm not quite sure how to do that in Unity. I don't know if you pass it in the overrides. Actually, I'm not sure. Oh, well, the idea is that once you figure out the API to create a scope, anything within that scope, it's scoped to that process, right? To that scope block. So if I put a scope around just this resolve, then this singleton, so I don't know the API for it, but let's say I did a scope here, right? Oops. And then I decided to do another scope there and another scope there. Right, let's say I decided to do this. That means within the context of this scope, it's just like variable scoping, if you will. When I call resolve, all the dependencies for this scope are restricted or scoped to this scope. That's a lot of scopes. Right, so for example, in our case, if we had this register singleton and we had a logger, even though it's a singleton, everything resolved, all the dependencies and everything resolved through this chain would get the same instance of that logger. However, on the second scope, during this resolve chain, this instance of the person service would get a different same instance throughout that resolve process, right? So for example, okay, we're resolving person 1 in scope 1. This is logger 1. This is logger 1. Done. If I go into scope 2 and we resolve person service, guess what? This is going to be logger 2. This is going to be logger 2 because that singleton logger is scoped to that specific call, right? Does that make sense? That chain. So all these registrations that you put in here, when you create a scope, you're basically scoping those registrations to that scope chain, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. That's really confusing. That's even confusing for me to say. T-Min, technically, when you extend, you may not have to go through all the new statements and change them, but you still need to go through your tests and fix them, don't you? Well, it depends. If you're adding, like if you're not using DI, if you're using the old bad way of newing up equals new logger, right? If you were to add a constructor parameter, then you broke everywhere you're newing up that logger, and you'll have to go add your parameter to the constructor, right? That's what I mean. So it depends on what you're extending, but the majority of apps that I've seen do not properly use a DI container, and so they have to fight with that. They fight with that everywhere. You make a change to a constructor, find, replace, or you got to go new up these objects, pass your statics around, whatever you got to do to fix your compile errors and hope that it functions right. Man, my phone is going off. I'll make sure these aren't important. Oh, nope, not important. Just make sure my boss isn't trying to get a hold of me. Brian, why are you working right now? I need you in this meeting. That would suck. I hope he's not watching. No, my boss is cool. He's cool. He wants me to stream more. He's like, Brian, you need to stream more. I'm like, okay. All right, I can do that. So I hope I hope I didn't confuse anyone too bad on the whole scoping thing. Hope that makes sense. Hackle says, where would you create the container in different types of apps? Well, normally the container is created at the root of the application, right? Normally it's at the root of the app. So for example, you know, if you're doing something like WPF, I'm gonna use that because the Prism library is a framework for building, for architecting and maintainable, testable, extensible XAML applications. And so its containers created at the root application, so like on startup, essentially. Do I have a quick sample maybe I could show? Let me see if I can find a really quick sample to give you an idea. It's a little more advanced because it's like a real app. How about, I think IG Outlook might be a good sample to look at. And so this is like a real application that has modules, right? So we'll look at the app XAML here. Oh, this is an old version of Prism. This is very old. This needs to be updated. So in the case of Prism, what happens is you create what's called modules. And these modules, for example, this mail module, this is where you do your registrations with your container, right? So this application is composed at runtime. So the main executable is only one view. This view, shell. Like you can see, there's no views in this main application. I mean, there's nothing here. It's just like a master page, right? It's just a master page. Resist. I am a high school student from India, just starting to learn C# and .NET. Could you give some advice on how to start? Everything's very confusing. So many project types, very confusing. Resist. Let me get back to that one. Let me get back to that one. All right. Okay. So this project here, this is just a placeholder. There's nothing in this main project except for some theming information, some resources, and images. Okay, there's one view. One view. But all the main functionality of the application are in these modules. Mail, contact, calendar. Actually, will this build? I haven't run this in so long. I'm not even sure. Oh, it did. Holy cow. Oh, my cool little... Ah, nope. No, it won't build. This is a very old... I need to update this. Actually, you know what I should do? I should update this on stream. We should update this application to .NET Core. .NET 5. We should update this to .NET 5 because this is probably... What is this? This is... As soon as Visual Studio wants to show... Which it's not showing. Is it that old? It won't even show the properties window? Oh my gosh, it's so old the properties window won't even show. That's insane. Okay, hold on. Let's unload. Where's unload? Unload project. Oh, 4. Okay, .NET 4, 6. So yeah, this is a very old application. Reload project. Ha! One dev, has your boss noticed an increase in sales on Inversion 6 since started streaming? I don't think so. I don't think I'm helping with sales at all. I don't even talk about our stuff. I don't even talk about our stuff. I'm talking about other stuff. I should probably talk about our stuff more, honestly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I better start talking about some Inversion stuff. Hackle, I get the idea. Only one container per app, right? Yeah, so this this main executable is just a master page, and then at runtime, we have these regions that you inject content into. If I can find a region, pop up. Oh, right here. See this has a region name, right? And then if you go into a module, you can see that you can register things and into regions, right? Add things to regions, all this great stuff. So yeah, it's complicated. This is much more advanced, but this is how you would properly architect an enterprise application, right? But what I was trying to get at is all those modules, those mail, contact, all that stuff, those are separate projects, and you register at the root of the root class, which is the module class, and that's where all the registration happens, right? Oh, Hackle, you've done some Prism. Awesome. Okay, let's get back to a resist question about, can you give some advice on how to start? Actually, you know, Microsoft Learn has some good, they're building some good content. If you go to Microsoft Learn, I don't want to sign in. Let's just look. GitHub.net. Learn C#. Ah, here. I'm gonna put this in the chat for you. There. They're right there, resist. I'm gonna put that in the chat. But this would probably be a good place to start. It walks you through, you know, kind of teaching you the basics of C# and things like that. And so, you know, man, that's a great question because I've been doing this so long, I haven't really thought about what I did to learn. I should probably start creating some type of list or some type of collection of learning content for people because, you know, I've been doing this so long, I kind of forget. And I've kind of reflected a little bit on myself and I start to think like, when I used to reply to questions, I used to go, oh, that's easy, just do this. And then I start thinking like, wait a minute, Brian, don't be a prick. Like, not everything is easy to everyone. Just because you've been doing this 20 years, you know things, right? You have some experience. So I've been trying to take it's easy out of my vocabulary. And because I realized like, oh crap, no, it wasn't easy when I was getting started. It's only easy now because I know it, right? And once you learn it, it'll be easy for you. But until you learn it, it's not going to be easy. So I got to stop saying that, right? Mahesh also said, oh yeah, Mahesh, great point. Pluralsight has some great content for .NET development. Actually, I'm going to put in a link if I can find it. Yeah. Okay, here. I cannot copy and paste anything. So I have a Pluralsight course for learning how to use Prism for WPF. And I have some custom control courses. But if you click that link there, it'll take you to Pluralsight, and you can browse the catalog and learn. And they have like a here. I'm gonna click on that link myself. They have it's a 10-day trial, 15-day trial, right? You could try for free. I forgot how many days it is. Oh, 10-day. It's a 10-day free trial. So yeah, so if you're looking to learn, Pluralsight has a ton of great content that goes across all kinds of different technologies. So just click that link and click on try, and you get a free 10-day trial. So learn as much as you can in 10 days. And then also every now and then they'll send me like a coupon or something like that, and I'll give out like a month free every now and then. So if you follow me, watch my streams, subscribe to my channel, and then I do giveaways every now and then for these codes, and I also do announcements from when they like have a free weekend, because sometimes they give you like a whole free weekend, 3 days of just learning as much as you can, and so I'll announce that as well, right? Luciano, but the 10-day trial has hours. Oh, really? Really? It has an hours limit? I did not know that. They don't make it sound like you have an hours limit. It makes it sound like you have access to everything. But hey, it's still get what you can out of it, right? Get what you can of it. Okay, apart from Brian, please also check I Am Tim Corey. He has a lot of great stuff, .NET and general stuff like Solid. Yep. I've heard of I Am Tim Corey. I haven't really checked his content out, but I've heard great things about it. I'm actually not a huge fan of the solid principles. I think I don't think they hold water, honestly. That's a conversation for a different time. I don't think the solid principles really hold up. No, not at all. They're actually pretty easy to debunk. Yeah. What PC specs do I have? Oh, I'll show you what I have. I have a Digital Storm. Digital Storm. What's their website? Is this just Digital Storm? So I have a Digital Storm not workstation. Sorry, desktop. I have a Lumos. And then it's been a while. Can I just bring up my... This is probably the easiest way. So yeah, so I have a AMD Ryzen 9 3900 12-core processor, 3.8 gigahertz, 64 gigs of RAM, and then where's my graphics card? It's like a 28. What is that thing called? What is that thing called? NVIDIA 20 something. 2080? Is that it? Technology. Where do you build it? Oh, select model. I think they gave me my options here. I went with this one, the Ryzen. Where's the graphics card? I forgot which graphics card I got. I think it's the 1080. Check the task manager. Okay, let me check the task manager. Will it tell me my Will it tell me that? So I have my Ryzen 9. Where do I find my graphics card? Oh, NVIDIA GeForce. That's it. 2080 Super. Thank you very much. One dev, gotta go. Thanks for joining. Good to see you, my friend. Hope to see you next time. Yep, so that's what I have. The RTX 2080 Super. By Digital Storm. Man, I love this machine. It's pretty, too. It's pretty. It looks nice. Ooh, well, I don't have this. I don't have all that. No, I'm too cheap for that. Nope. Not buying all that liquid cool stuff. Mine's just normal. God. Okay. Da-da-da-da. What's wrong with solid? That's a whole stream by itself. Oh, actually, has anyone ever written about that? Why solid sucks. Something like that? No, that's solid works. Why solid isn't good? Or is wrong? How about is wrong? Ah, someone did write about this. Why every element of solid is wrong. See, someone's beat me to it. Oh, he has a slide deck. Oh, I guess this is... Oh, this was a talk they must have given. This is a talk they must have given. Let's see. Yeah, so here's all the solid principles, right? Single responsibility, open, closed. The Liskov substitution, interface segregation. I actually like... I like the dependency inversion stuff, though. But yeah. Yeah. Go... I don't know. If you search like I just did, I'm sure someone's written a blog post about it as well. But yeah, I agree that I think solid is not what it's cracked up to be, personally. Caught the Canyon, my friend. Good to see you. How long will this go on? Oh, actually, whenever I'm done. I don't set a time. Normally I go at about lunchtime, which is 30 minutes from now. But if I talk, I talk. All right. It's just the first time. Oh, this is the first time I'm learning any language seriously, so not familiar with the learning curve at all, nor how to start stuff and making projects from ground up. Well, Resist, what kind of projects do you want to make, my friend? What are you curious about? What kind of projects do you want to write? One Dev, can you stream someone on your channel like you do on Twitch so I could add your stream to my channel for others to see? Do you mean like... kind of like hosting? Is that what you mean? Is that what you mean? Like host someone? I'm not sure. I don't think you can do that on YouTube, actually. Rajnai, probably joined late. Which DI container do you prefer? So I actually prefer dry IOC right now. I'm using Unity because the API is, I think, easier in my opinion for beginners. But dry IOC is definitely better performing, much faster. And so that's what I always use is dry IOC. And you know what? There is a DI container performance comparison. I think this is it. That will go through all the different containers. Yeah, I think, well, that's taking a long time to load. Your website's slow. And he keeps it up to date. This person keeps it up to date. And so dry IOC is one of the fastest for .NET in general. And it has a ton of features. Unity is not for games. Okay, so this is a different type of Unity. Okay, so what we're talking about is a DI container called the Unity container. You're thinking Unity 3D for building games, mobile games, right? So in production app, how many interface do you expect to have in a VM? Depends on what that VM does. I don't really put a number on them at all. My VMs are normally pretty simple. The only thing VMs really do, or they manage your state. That's really all they're supposed to do, right? You'll have services in there for getting your data, fetching your data, and then you'll have properties, backing properties for data binding in your UI. So there shouldn't be like a ton of services required, but it really depends on how complex your application is too, because I've written some highly complex applications for financial services. I mean, if you've done a financial services app, geez, working with quants can be challenging. I'm at Xamarin Dev and wanted to know when and if Prism was... I don't know if Prism will support Shell because Shell sucks. Shell sucks. I would never write an app with Shell. I'm sorry. It's a piece of crap. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You know, as of today, unless they do a ton of work, Shell is a piece of crap. And Prism will not support it until it's not a piece of crap. Right? That's just my opinion. But Shell has so many limitations as it is. Honestly, if you're writing a new Xamarin Forms app, just do a standard Xamarin Forms navigation. Don't use Shell. You're gonna hate yourself if you use Shell. Unless it's a very simple application. If it's a very simple application, then you could probably get away with a Shell app because it's so basic and simple. But yeah, I will never touch a Shell app. I am never gonna write a Shell app. They have a lot of work to do there. I would switch to Flutter before I created a Shell app. Let me put it that way. That's how strongly I feel against, how crappy Shell is. But that's just me. That's just me personally. You have to make your own decisions, right? So I suggest you play with it. If you like it, that's great. If you like it, that is awesome. It's a tool that you can utilize and be successful with. More power to you. Me personally, I think it sucks. But I'm opinionated, so if you can't tell. Okay. Well, I'm thinking, as far as dependency injection goes, I think we got it. Like that's really all there is to it. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy stuff. What do you all think? Do you recommend a resource to learn creating charts using Skia Sharp? Ooh. Actually, I don't know. To learn? Let's see. I don't think that's... Let me see if I can find something real quick. I don't know of anything. There's some docs out there. There's some blogs, some Microsoft blogs. But they're not really great. They're very basic, right? Like showing you how to clear the canvas and write to the draw some shapes, drawing some paths. But they don't really show you how to draw charts, because drawing charts with Skia Sharp is not something I personally would undertake. I would much rather just pay $100 and get charts for Xamarin. So for example, just go get $99 and buy these charts. Okay, keep going, scrolling. Right, donut chart, data chart, category chart, funnel chart, pie chart, sparkline. $100, you get all these controls. Linear gauge, readable gauge, all that crap. Scheduling, Excel library. So if you want to work with Excel, all that kind of stuff. Just, yeah, go spend the $100, man. $100. That's all it is. And you get all those charts for Xamarin. And Xamarin Forms. And if you're doing something like Uno or UWP or WinUI, those are actually freely available on NuGet right now as a preview. So if you go to NuGet.org and type in infragistics, okay, I can spell infragistics.uwp, for example. Here's all the charts: data visualization, gauges, data grid, charts. Yeah, go at it. It's all on NuGet right now, right? Oh crap! You can't. You can't see my screen. My bad. Whoopsie. Yeah. Thank you for that, Linus. I appreciate it. Thanks for the heads up. Do you play an instrument? I play guitar. I used to. I haven't played in a long time. I've not played in a very long time. What about Razor Pages? Talking about, whoops. For razor plate pages, ignite UI, ignite UI.blazor. If you're doing Blazor and you want to do razor pages, that's what you want to use. You want to use ignite UI.blazor. So this has the grid and charts in it. Charts, maps, editors, all that great stuff. Actually, we don't have maps yet. Why'd they put maps there? Do we have a map for Blazor? No way. Did I miss that? Huh! We have a map for Blazor. Never mind. We do have a map for Blazor. That's hilarious. I didn't even know that. Oh my gosh. Well, now I know. Now I know. Yeah, it's lunchtime. Okay, how to integrate with Google Calendar using dependency injection. Okay, so that's not real. So let's talk about what you would need for that. Okay. First off, you would need a service. Okay, you would need your... Let's go. Am I within this? No, I want to be outside of this. I want to be outside of that. You would want something like, you know, your class. Jeez, I cannot type. Class, Google, Calendar, service. Right? And then you would have methods in here, like get items. Right? Whatever it is. It wouldn't be a void, it'd be a collection of something. Actually, I'm just going to stub this out. So it'd be I interface. Right? Add item. And you might add something. I don't know what it would be, but... So you would basically create a service, right, that you would use in your application, and you would call the APIs for the Google Calendar to read your calendar, to add or modify, to all that stuff, right? Update, delete. And then you would just go through your service, which would then in turn call the APIs for Google, which I assume they do expose some type of RESTful API for that, right? And so, for example, I have... It might look something like this. Hold on, let me show you this app to kind of give you an idea of what it would look like if you were to wrap something. Okay, so for example, I have a task service that hooks into a product we call Slingshot, which is like a product management app. Like, so let me go to a Slingshot. So Infragistics has this product called Slingshot. Oh my gosh. Just let me into the Slingshot. Right, so we have this product here, and we have tasks and all these teams and all this stuff, right? But I wanted an API to interact and add tasks programmatically based on, you know, certain actions I take. So what I do is I created an application that uses the HTTP client that basically calls the API, right? We get the data, the JSON response. I read the string, I parse it, and then I populate my objects. And then I have objects in my view models, right? So here's my view model where I have a selected task, my collection of tasks, all this stuff, right? So for example, my view model here has a dialogue service, my teams, task service, and a task list service. That's all the services it has. And so all these services are responsible for doing all the real work, right? So I have business objects that represent my UI, and then I take those business objects that represent my UI, and I pass the state or the data to these services, and the services actually do the work, which will add these objects via those RESTful calls via the API into the Slingshot application. So that's kind of how it works. So you can see I have my my task service, task list service, my task service, and my team service, right? That's my oh, my head is in the way. Sorry, let me minimize that. There. Right, so I have 3 services that I use. That's kind of how it works. How would you serialize an interface item so you can store it to a local file? I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're getting to. I'm not sure what you're getting at. It really depends on like what you're doing. I don't know exactly what you're doing there, but you could have a method called serialize on your interface, or you could do an extension method like public static class serialize extensions, and then public static void serialize this I'll say iLogger, and then you'll have your logger, and you could do something with it, like serialize it, right? Like it really depends, because then you can come to your logger, where I had an instance of it. See where I have logger? And I can call serialize on it. But the serialize is this extension method serialize. Right? So I can now do something with the logger. Right? So I can write an extension method to do that if I wanted to. Right? Just depends. Just really depends on what you're doing. Lots of different ways to accomplish that. Do you use Node.js with React.js to create API or .NET Web API? So on my end, my responsibilities is I don't really create the APIs. I consume them, right? So my job in Infragistics isn't on the back end. Mine is on the front end, where I help customers create apps and solve complex problems and architect their applications to set them up for success, right? That's where I lie. So I lie more on the front end, middle front, if you will, like middle front-ish. I haven't been in a back end in 10, 15 years. So, but I do think the APIs that I showed you in that last sample I opened up, I believe that was actually an ASP.NET API, if I remember correctly. Matt, what's your general flow for consuming a new API in C#? Any tools, generate classes or anything? No, actually, so that's a great question, Matt. Usually what happens is, you know, there's two different concepts here. You have your UI, right? You have your UI, and that represents your application interactions, right? So you're going to have business objects that represent the state in your application. This is one of the big reasons I hate ORMs. I hate ORMs because when you use an ORM to represent the business objects for your UI, your database looks like an object-oriented program. And that's not what a database should look like. I can always tell when a developer designs a database versus when a DB designs a database. Because a database is meant to be designed to be, you know, high-performing CRUD operations, right? Normalized, structured, and meant for high-performance read-write updates, right? All your CRUDs. Your database should not represent the UI in your application. It's just not how it works. And, you know, one of the perfect examples I give for this is like maybe you have something called types, whatever a type is, but you can have different types. In a database, all your types, there'd be a key value pair, right? A key and a value. The description and the value, that's all you need. It's a type. So all your types in a database will be in one table, as an example. But you may have 20 different types, business objects, in your UI. You know what I'm saying? Like it might be a dumb example, maybe not a good example, but I'm just trying to drive home the point that your UI the business objects that power the application should not match the database 100%. So I don't like ORMs because it drives you down that path, right? So the first step is I need to understand the requirements of the data that I need, okay? Then I will create my interface, right? I need to know what I need to identify the data, right? So maybe like if we're doing calendar service and I'm trying to understand, okay, what data do I need from this? Well, you know what? I need enumerable. I need a collection of my calendar items, right? So I have, you know, something called get items. Whoops, this is an interface, sorry. Right, I start stubbing out my interface of what I need. And then I'll just start implementing those one at a time. See, so that's kind of how I do it. I don't do it all at once. So I only get what I need. And hopefully there's an API that gives me the access to that. And if it's not, I got to go back to the team and I got to say, hey, we need this. Or this doesn't make any sense. You don't need to provide this. Right? Things like that. So it's really, I guess I look at it very differently. I don't like to go from database up because to me, the app, the user experience is the most important, right? I need to make sure that my app kicks butt. It makes sense. It's designed well. The interactions make sense and I can store the state. Now that I've understood how this has to work, I can start building that bridge between the state and the business objects and the underlying data. How does this need to be broken out? I have all these type objects, these enums, if you will, in the UI that represent things. How should I parse that out and save that to the DB now? What does my service need to be to take my business object, parse that to where it's in a proper format that the database can understand, right? Hi, Brian. So you prefer APIs over... Oh, yes. I prefer APIs over ORM any day. Any day. Like Entity Framework. I never used Entity Framework. Didn't like it. Didn't like it at all. What I did like was CSLA. Because I don't know if anyone's ever heard of CSLA. It's, what is it? CSLA.net. Wait. That's going to bring up .net. I don't... Gotta search for, no. I don't want to search for that. The only hard part is searching for it. Because if you put in .net, it's going to go to this website. CSLA.net. Yeah, right here. CSLAnet.com. So this is a business object framework. This is a framework focused on nothing but business logic, business rules, data access, right? All that stuff. You can kind of see the diagram he has here. And so I prefer to use, like if I'm in .NET, I'll prefer to hit the database directly because a lot of the apps I deal with, they're internal applications and they'll hit the SQL Server, directly. Good old ADO.NET. But if you have to go through an API, well, now you're hitting web services and things like that. But if you care about like business logic and authentication, authorization, like all that kind of stuff on an object level, like for example, oh, this person A is a manager and can access this property on this object. If you're not a manager, you can't read, write this property on this object. That's the control that you would get with something like CSLA.net. You can actually attribute roles on properties and methods of these objects, and if you don't have that role, the person interacting with the application cannot read, write, or anything with that property or method, which is pretty awesome. For desktop applications, do you feel the same about API? I do not use ORMs, period. Even for desktop. Even for desktop, I do not use ORMs. Yes, I worked on a project where I replaced CSLA with EF. Ugh. 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 What the?
Hey, pal,
why would you do that?
You just blowing from Stupid Town?
Why would you do that? Oh my god. You just lost so much functionality. I don't know, I guess it depends, right? If you don't mind writing or interacting with ADO.NET and you just want to WYSIWYG, drag, drop, link statements to generate all your stuff, I mean, that's fine, right? I'm not going to judge you. But you lose a lot of functionality by using EF. And I guarantee you, since you're using EF, your database looks just like your object model in your application. I guarantee it. Guarantee your table structure, your table dependencies, everything in that database looked just like your business objects in your application. And that's not how you should design databases, in my opinion. But that's just me. That's just me. You got to keep in mind, my experience comes from large enterprise applications. You know, for example, one of the biggest applications I worked on was called CASE, which is a computer-assisted estimating system or management. Basically, what it allowed you to do, it was for a construction company, and we built like nuclear power plants, bridges, dams, military bases, things like that, wind turbines, like all this crazy stuff. They would use this application to go out into the field, and they would estimate to the bolt, to the nut and bolt of what it would cost to build that thing, right? What equipment, who would install it? Like, it was a crazy system. So those are the types of systems I would build, things that you would build a nuclear power plant with. Oh, I'm falling behind on here. If you don't use EF, what do you think we should use? I'm not going to tell you what to use. I will never tell you what to use. I say use what you're successful with. If that's EF, right? If that's Entity Framework, then that's Entity Framework. If you're successful, that's awesome. As long as you're providing value to your end users and selling your product, beautiful. I personally don't, just because I will either handwrite my objects, I'll use CSLA, I'll use a true business layer, and then I will have a data layer that populates my business. And my data layer will be responsible for making that transition between my business layer and the actual database underneath, right? So that data access logic will control that information back and forth, okay? And sometimes I might have what's called the data transfer object, which I'll have my huge, like just massive business object with all these rules and business logic. And then I'll have a very simple DTO that's responsible for transferring state, right? Sometimes I do that too. So it really depends. Dapper, I don't use Dapper, actually. I've never used it. Don't know anything about it. I should look into it though. Let's see. One Lubo one says, I also don't like EF, even though we had to work with one from a DB first perspective. Yeah. But the app sucks big time. Those who wrote it quit the job after completing. Oh, that sucks. Stop looking at my database. It's dangerous to talk to a database from a desktop app because the connection string can be retrieved. Oh no, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong if your connection string is readable from your desktop app. Alex, no. That problem has been solved many years ago. You never have your connection string with your app in plain text like that. Never. So yes. Do I use domain-driven design principles? No, I do not use DDD. Let's see. Oh, that client-specific. They want to get rid of CodeSmith. Oh, CodeSmith! Oh my gosh, I totally remember Code. Are they still around? I totally forgot about them. Hold on. CodeSmith. Are they? CodeSmith. They are still around. Are they? It looks like they're still around. I can't believe it. So for those of you who don't know, CodeSmith has been around for ages, and they're basically code generation. They're powered basically off T4 templates. And T4 is really cool. If you've never done T4 templates, you should totally look into that. I may have to do a stream on T4 because it's an old technology, but it is super useful for automating things. I actually used T4 to build my own EF framework-like designer for CSLA business objects. So I can design my business objects drag and drop with properties, and it would generate all the code using T4. So yeah, T4 is pretty cool. I can't believe these guys are still around. Good for them. Good for them. That's nice. Yeah, EF is T4 too. Yeah, basically anything when you're generating code like that's T4. T4's been around a long time. So if this is the first time you've heard of T4, please check this out. Generate code with T4. Boom, text templates. Here, I'll put this in the chat for everyone. This is really cool. I really like T4. I'm big on automating tasks. I create a lot of tools to make my job easier, especially if I'm working on a big project. I'll actually spend, if I'm working on a big project and I've identified something that's going to be kind of repetitive throughout the life of the project, I'll create a Visual Studio extension to automate that process. Right? I'll spend the time to do that because it pays off huge, and T4 is a big part of that. So for example, has anyone ever seen App Map? I'm way off topic on dependency injection, but have you ever seen App Map? Let's do this. So one day I got really frustrated because I have to build a lot of apps all the time. But they're like quick to prove a concept, to prototype something, to show a customer something, right? App Map. Is it installed? Don't tell me it's not installed. Oh, here it is. Right, so I created this project called App Map. And this App Map is for Xamarin Forms. Okay, and it lets me choose like it uses Prism, but it lets me choose my my target platforms. And what it allows me to do is check this out. Is it allows me, oh yeah, you know what? I need a login page. So I'm gonna call this login. And you know, if login fails, I'm gonna go to a page called, you know, failed. And this is gonna be a navigate. But if I succeed, I'm gonna go to a master detail page that has, you know, these pages on it. So I'm gonna navigate to this on a success, right? And then, I don't know, this might be products. Might be a products page, right? This might be, I don't know what to call it. I'll just say items, orders, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, right? Oh, maybe there's a button on this page that navigates to some other page, right? Basically, I got tired of having to like generate all these apps, right click, add new item, add view model. So I did this instead. I wrote this tool that allows me to drag and drop and create these pages, and I generate all that code. Right? Yeah, so it's like Adobe XD, but for Visual Studio. So now there's all my views, all my view models, and if I open up one of these, my buttons for all my navigation's there. Like the navigation's all hooked up for me. Right? So these are the type of tools that I'll build that make my life easier. Right? So yeah, it's pretty cool. And then all my view models, you'll get a base view model somewhere. Oh, it's under infrastructure. I want to rename that. Here's my base view model. Everything's like, it's all commented and works. It just works. You just hit F5 and it just runs and works. Right? Sure, save. But yeah, so that's a tool I wrote, and it uses T4. It uses T4 to generate all that code. Okay. Can you share your future? Or can you share your view on future of WPF? WPF is huge. WPF is huge right now. It's not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. There's a lot of, there's a ton of new WPF apps every day. And I know because I help customers write them. And the reason you don't really hear much about WPF is because the companies writing these are internal applications. These aren't like customer-facing apps, right? They're internal. You'll never see them. For example, The 911 software that runs half the United States 911 emergency calls is a WPF app using inversion controls and Prism, right? So I like to say that Prism helps save lives because it's used in 911 software and it's a WPF application. So whenever you call 911 and ask for help, chances are the person on the end of that line is a WPF app dispatching police and medical help, right? So you'll never know about these apps. So it gives WPF a perception that it's not popular or not being used, but when forums and WPF are still here, still apps being created, it's crazy. It's awesome. Yeah, a lot of tools that generate the objects. Whenever I hear other people talk about coding, I feel like I know nothing. Corey, I am the same as you. I feel like I'm in so many different technologies. I have to jump between like React or Angular, JavaScript, TypeScript. You know, I'll be in freaking C#, Blazor. Like I'm in between all these different programs or these technologies, and I get so lost. I'm like, oh my God, I know nothing. I know nothing. Yeah, I remember, John, I remember when people said it would die. Yeah, Silverlight, it's the WPF killer. Oh man, where's my? Oh, I don't have a laugh, do I? Do I have a laugh? Nope, I don't. I don't have a laugh. But yeah, I remember that. I remember that. And then Silverlight died, and guess which is still around? Guess which one's still around? Yeah, Johnny H. Yeah, I totally have the same mindset of programming random extensions. Extensions are awesome, man. If you work for a company and you are not writing extensions, you're doing it wrong. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. I am internal dev, tools dev, can confirm, use WPF. Oh, thanks for sharing, Matt. That's awesome. John's making one for a motorcycle company. Internal. Johnny H, have you thought about just using TypeScript for everything? With, I think it's called Express for desktop apps. No, I mean, TypeScript's cool. I'll use it where it belongs. But no, I don't believe in the TypeScript for everything. You know, when I pick, I know what you meant, Electron. And with Electron, you can do, with Electron apps, you could do a React app, you could do an Angular Electron app. You can do all kinds of technologies, but it's basically JavaScript, right? TypeScript is JavaScript. But yeah, no, it depends on the project, right? It depends on the app, on the technology you use. It's not a one to rule them all. Doesn't exist, right? You have to think about your requirements and then choose, because you may not want to do Electron, or maybe you're doing React Native instead, right? If you're doing React. So it really depends. What about apps being installed on custom machines? The WPF store? Of course, Corey. Not only that, like WPF, like whoops UWP's butt. Like UWP has not been adopted by the masses at all. And now that you can put WPF apps in the Windows Store, I mean, come on, there's no point in even writing UWP. No, there's no point in it. Kesh, what's your opinion on WPF for beginners? Well, what do you want to know? Why not? Why not? Yeah, John, UWP does suck. It sucks bad. Alan, my friend, good to see you. Prism for UWP needs to be a thing. AutoFac as well. No, not AutoFac. No. No. Yeah, you totally trolled. AutoFac will never be supported by Prism. What do you think about TDD? Especially with regards to doing WPF. You know what, Zoltan, that's a great question. I do not personally believe in TDD. There's a number of reasons for this. A big one being, I do not believe that tests should drive the design of your application. It should not drive the design of your architecture at all. No, zero, no. However, you should test for sure. You should test. One thing I like about TDD is it does force you to test, which is really the only positive I can think of. But I do not personally buy into the TDD stuff. But I do test after development. So I will write the requirement and then write my test to verify the requirement. And if anything changes, then I know it's been broken, right? So yeah. What about behavior-driven tests? I don't have a lot of experience with behavior-driven tests, actually. Actually, what? I don't even know what behavior-driven tests are. What is that? Is that a new thing? B is an uncommon term. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's uncommon. Well, just because I haven't heard of it doesn't mean it's uncommon. There's a lot of things I haven't heard of. Focus on the behavior of users rather than the technical functional of software. I'll have to do some research on that. I haven't really played with that at all. I'm not sure what this entails, but I'm more of a test during development, or like as I write the method or as I finish the function. Right after that, I'll go and write the test. Right. Zoltan, we test after. Yep. As long as you get that test in, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Did you compare Xamarin versus React Native versus Flutter in performance? No, I haven't, but I do know Xamarin performance is, I've heard. I don't want to say I know. I have not confirmed, but I have heard that Flutter kicks Xamarin's butt in performance. From my personal experience, I would agree with that, because I write Xamarin apps, Xamarin Forms apps. I don't write native Xamarin, but Xamarin Forms apps I've written, and I've written Flutter apps, and Flutter is much faster on Android. Much. Startup is insanely fast compared to Xamarin Forms. React Native, I don't have a lot of experience with React Native. I was just experimenting with it 2 weeks ago, but I don't have enough experience with it to make a comment on that, actually. I need more experience with React Native before I'll throw an opinion out there. Good thing I didn't write the short form. Have you ever used WinForms? Yes, I have used WinForms. I have most definitely have used WinForms. And just about every WinForms app you can think of is just a big monolithic monster of spaghetti code. Those are not fun to maintain. I think there are way too many options to choose from. People choose the one first, WPF. It's evolving, so it's worth to use it. A lot of options for sure. A lot of options. What is your secret way to store something like connection strings in desktop apps securely? Isn't it more secure to go through an API? It's not a secret. Not a secret. There's actually a few different ways to do this, but essentially you encrypt everything. Everything's encrypted. Blazor question mark. So Blazor's cool. It's cool, right? It's new. It's got some things they're working on. But right now, I would not personally write a production app with Blazor. Too many problems. Performance is pretty freaking bad in Blazor. Like really bad. Really bad. For example, if you create a Blazor WebAssembly app, just file new, Blazor WebAssembly, create, I don't know, a person object with like 3 string properties on it and an int, or, puts a couple properties on it. Then create a loop to create, say, 10,000 of them. Something small. You will bring that app to a screeching halt. Just loop through 10,000, creating 10,000 people objects, or person objects, and you will bring that thing to a halt. That's how bad the performance is. Very easy to prove out how sucky the performance is. Michael says, have you talked about shell and forms? What do you think about it? Yeah, we actually talked about shell earlier. Shell, in my opinion, sucks really bad. I would never use it. Never, ever, ever use it. John says he's debating updating an MVC app to Blazor. No, don't do it. Don't do that. If you really, really want to use Blazor, go server side at least, because the performance is better there because it's ASP.NET Core, right? So the WebAssembly is really bad. The server side, which is ASP.NET Core, is much, much better. But so the issue with that is that it uses signal R. So for every interaction, because it's server side, It's going to send information back via Signal R. It's going to send a response back to the client and re-render whatever was being changed, right? And so Signal R itself has some limitations with, how many connections it can have and all that kind of stuff, right? So I don't know how well a Blazor server app would scale personally because of the Signal R limitations, but I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't work fine with a small app, And John says, yeah, and I'll need to update the API to Signal R. Yeah, I don't know. What would you be getting out of it? That's what I would ask. What would you be getting out of it? You're already using ASP.NET MVC. I mean, it's still a perfectly valid technology, right? Corey says, I know you love Prism, having worked on it, but are there any other frameworks that you're interested in or envious of? Well, it depends on the platform. For WPF or Xamarin, no. There's nothing out there that I think does it better than Prism. But there's lots of frameworks for other technologies for sure. WPF for the first project, a cool, simple app. Well, it depends on what you want to learn. Like, do you want to be desktop dev? Do you want to be a web dev? What kind of apps do you want to write? Single page applications? Do you want to be in Python? Do you want, there's so much out there. So much out there. If you choose WPF, it's still, you learn XAML, you learn a lot of things that can take you into other XAML-based platforms. C# works across a lot of different platforms as well, so it just depends on what you're into, really. Should we unit test simple getters and setters like auto properties? What would you test? What would you test? I wouldn't test a set and a get. Would you just be testing if you can set a property and get a property? No, I wouldn't personally test that. Do the event aggregator use RX? Looks like it. No, it doesn't use RX. Nope. Event aggregator is just a publisher subscriber event aggregator pattern. That's all it is. And actually, the code is freely available for you to go check out. It's on GitHub under source, core, events. This is the event aggregator. Right there. So click on that link, and if you want to see how the event aggregator works, go check it out. It's pretty simple, actually. Not much to it. Okay, I want to design beautiful pages and control your suggestions on it. Where do I start? Well, it really depends on the platform. So if you're doing WPF, you might want to start with, let me find this link here. Where is it? Oh, I don't have it. So, well, crap. I have a WPF course, WPF custom controls course on Pluralsight. So if you're looking at getting into that, I would suggest clicking that link that I just put in there, and it's going to take you to Pluralsight, and then just do a quick search for WPF custom controls. And I teach you how to write custom controls. Right here. So you might want to start there. That'd be a good place to start. What is your opinion on a reactive UI? Haven't used it yet. No opinion. Haven't used it yet. Getting there. All right. Naji, speaking of DI, what if we end up calling lots of services in a class constructor? Is that a design problem? Well, it depends. Not necessarily. But it depends on what's a lot. Like if you're talking like 20, yeah, you probably got something going on there. Probably some type of code smell there. If you have like 20 services, like, But, if your app is complicated, I don't know, you might need that. I don't know. It's really hard to tell. But if you have like 20 something dependencies in your constructor, I would say that's a code smell you want to look at. Do you think Xamarin is gaining more market share for people and companies to create apps? You know, I'm not sure they're winning anyone over, really. I think Uno is doing a better job at the moment, Uno platform. I think Uno platform is doing a better job. I think that, you know, with Microsoft basically killing Xamarin Forms and replacing it with Maui is going to break a crap ton of people. And Xamarin Forms, I think, is going to die in like a year after the Maui release. You won't, you know, so you'll have to convert to Maui. Hopefully they'll have some tools that you just right click and upgrade your project to Maui. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I don't know. I think with those kind of breaks and changes, you might really alienate some people. And Uno's been doing it right for a long time now. So it's hard to say. I don't know. I know that the customers I talk to, it's more about Angular, React, and web components that they're looking at. They're not looking at Xamarin to write their apps. They're writing apps for the web, and they'll share that code for their mobile apps. Right? But, all right, everyone. Well, if you haven't already, make sure you like this stream, because I think I've been watching other people stream on YouTube, and they're like the stream, YouTube algorithm. I don't know what the heck that means. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, can you do me a favor and subscribe real quick and let me know you subscribed? Because I'm supposed to have a little alert go off, and I haven't seen it go off. I haven't seen it go off, so I don't think it works. It's kind of annoying. You and Brian Noy's tutorials in WPF, IVM, Prism, Pluralsight are excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So subscribe just now. Zoltan, thanks. And I didn't see it come up. What the heck? Hold on. Hold on. I'm going to check this right now. I'm going to check this right now. Why didn't that work? I am checking my my alerts. Zeth, just subscribe. Yeah, and it's not coming up. Okay. Yeah, it's not getting it. Like everyone who just subscribed, it's the last subscriber I have is from like 10 hours ago. That is weird. That is really weird. So what's supposed to happen? I'm gonna show you what's supposed to happen. This is what's supposed to happen. See that? That's what's supposed to happen. But it's not working. Very strange. Okay, well, I'll need to look into that. Maybe I'll need to get in contact with support or something to figure out why those alerts are not working. Because I want to know. I want to know when you guys subscribe. Already a subscriber. I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much. Yeah, I need to know why this isn't working. Filter. Super chats. Nope. Don't care about super chats. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's not working. If you're a developer, fix it yourself. I might have to. I might write my own chatbot for YouTube so I can do this myself. I thought about it. I actually thought about it. I have some ideas. I have some ideas for sure. All right. Well, everyone, I want to thank you for, spending time with me today. I know you could spend your time doing anything else, anywhere else, but you chose to spend it with me. I greatly appreciate you all. I love you all, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day.